Israel had been wandering through the wilderness for 40 years. 40 years of shuffling around in the dust, waiting for their opportunity to finally take possession of the Promised Land. In those 40 years, a generation of Israelites passed away, and a new generation took up their identity and hope. This new generation had grown up on the stories of the Exodus. Their parents must have recounted tales of Egyptian slavery and parted waters and the thunder of Mount Sinai. They also grew up hearing the tales of a distant land flowing with milk and honey, of a land promised to their forefather generations ago, the Promised Land. Through those stories, that promise also became theirs. Yet what they knew, their experience, was wilderness. They were the children of a wandering wilderness people, and so they must have wondered so many times, just like we do. Would it ever happen? Was the Promised Land a reality or some dream of a better but impossible world? To this new generation of Israelites, a new leader was also given, a man named Joshua, who took the place of Moses. It would be Joshua who inspired his people to believe. Upon Moses' death, the Lord spoke to Joshua and told him that this was the time. The time had finally come for Israel to cross the Jordan River into the land of his promise. So Joshua sent messengers throughout the camp, instructing them to gather their possessions and pack up their tents. In 3 days, they would take possession of the land. Then Joshua addressed all Israel. He said to them, "Remember what Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you. The Lord your God is giving you a place of rest. He has given you this land." 40 years of waiting, and this was finally the moment. We all know what it is to hold on to a promise. Some of you know what it is to wait 40 years. The doubt, the frustration, the uncertainty, the pain. Israel's path had not been a straight line out of Egypt. So much had developed in ways none of them could have predicted, but still, here they were. What lay before them wasn't going to be easy. It would continue to challenge their faith as they faced fortified cities and vast armies. But like the generations before them, they too would be witnesses to the powerful and faithful hand of God. Maybe you've heard the story of Jericho, when God commanded Israel to march 7 times around the city's defenses. On the final lap of that final day, they shouted and worshiped and watched as the walls of that city miraculously crumbled to the ground. I sometimes think about Joshua, this young leader of God's people trying to fill the shoes of Moses. What must that scene have meant to him? The strange mix of humility and profound confidence it must have produced. There was no ambiguity in this success. God was fulfilling his promises. Not even the mighty walls of Jericho would stop them. To be a witness to it was to simultaneously be emboldened and humbled. Emboldened by the power of God's mighty hand, and humbled by how little God's victory had depended on them. It was not their success. It wasn't Joshua's military ingenuity. The promises they had for so long carried with them were finally coming true by God's intervention. The God of their parents was with them. The God of Moses was with Joshua. And his promises, after 40 years of waiting, were unfolding before their eyes. But there is a fascinating pattern that begins to develop in these stories, in so many of these biblical stories. To be witness to one of these great miracles of God's faithfulness is not an antidote to future doubt. Like their parents, the faith Israel had demonstrated at Jericho wasn't something they could ultimately hold on to. They too feared and grumbled and hoarded for themselves. Maybe this is the difficult lesson that is starting to set in across these biblical stories. It's so easy to evaluate and judge God, especially while we wait for promises which he hasn't yet fulfilled. But these stories remind us, it is God who is faithful, and it is we who so often fail Him. And so we all live by faith. As one New Testament writer put it, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It's the evidence of things we cannot see. We live by faith because we, like Israel, have seen His faithfulness. And while we wait, we know that He will be faithful again. God fulfills His promises. Listen.